Kenway! Kenway! 60 south! I'll see down!
Hey guys, welcome back to Beyond the Badge. I'm super excited tonight. Steve and I are going to have a sit down with you guys and talk about another modality of treatment and or therapy that he has tried recently. As you remember, we recently talked about stellate ganglion blocks. Both myself and Colleen have both done those. And we had both gotten some relief from our PTSD symptoms. Basically, what the next step would be ketamine therapy. And there's several different ways that ketamine therapy is done. I know it's something that I've been looking into, but I'm fortunate enough to know that Steve has been doing ketamine therapy, and from our conversations, you have nothing but awesome things to say about it. So I'm wondering if we could just kind of explain to the viewers tonight your journey with ketamine, how you got into it, just the profound effects that you think that you've been having with it. And then at the end, just kind of a recommendation. Like, do you think people that are going through their mental health journeys would benefit from the ketamine? So super excited that you're here, Steve. Obviously, you're going to be the go-to on this topic, man. First off, tell me, how long have you done the ketamine therapy?
Yeah, so I've been doing it now for probably about 4 months at this point, Nate, and it was a major game changer for me. Went through so many different series of medications trying to get my mental health symptoms under control. And it was probably about 4 months ago, and my primary doctor that I see said, "Hey, have you ever given thought to Spravato, which is the version of ketamine therapy that is just done nasally?" And so I had not really heard anything about it. And so what he shared with me is like, he has seen amazing results with patients that have been combining medication with ketamine assisted therapy, specifically Spravato, but that it was one of the biggest things that he saw that kind of moved the needle from a recovery standpoint, probably in the last 20 to 30 years since, some of the major drugs came out. And for me, it has done just that. I went from where I would say my symptoms were probably reduced by about 50% to when combining that with my therapy, my different modalities, my regular prescriptions, and then the ketamine. I probably moved that needle more to like the 75 to some days 80% in terms of reduction of symptoms. I think that it's one of those things that when I researched it, it's up and coming in the VA channels. It's just been a huge benefit for me.
That's Man, just even like I'm like a little kid, like, yeah, like to imagine 80% of what I feel on a daily going away, man, I would be in tears. And I know just, having the shot a few times now, I wouldn't say 80%. I would say maybe like I'd had a 25% like drop. And it was just short term though, maybe for like 3 or 4 days. But I can't imagine having a breakthrough like that for my symptoms. That would be a blessing. And I think that's why it's so important that you're here to share that, because there are so many different avenues in this large macro thing called mental health journey. And some people do the ketamine, some people do the stellate ganglion block, some people don't do any of those and do intensive outpatient therapy for a longer period of time or different things. And for us to be able to, as Beyond the Badge, bring voices that have done so many different things in that journey, I think really is going to be so beneficial, man.
I'm with you 100%. I wish had I known all of the things that I know about the different modalities now, from the different therapies to the SGB shots to the ketamine. I wish I would have known them all up front. And I wish when I was in my worst of my symptoms, struggling, I wish I would have known about them all because at first, for me, it was, hey, try this prescription. Oh, this doesn't work. Let's try this. It doesn't work. I have a drawer full of prescriptions that did nothing for me. Some of them made me worse. And it's overwhelming when you don't know everything that's out there. And I would have loved to have a podcast like this where I could tune in and I could listen and I could hear in one consolidated space all of the different options out there. And then I could lead that conversation with my doctors.
Yeah, no doubt. I have a very similar story of try this med, try this med, try this med, try this med. And it's frustrating because, at least for me, I look to the doctors as like, all right, fix me. Tell me what's wrong. Explain to me what I need to do to get better, and let's get it. And I use this analogy so much, but it's not like a broken leg. A broken leg, I think if you went to a doctor here or Alaska or, overseas, wherever, what they do to treat it is probably very similar. Unfortunately, mental health is so individualized that what you go through is going to be different than what I go through compared to the next person. And, you hit on it. Some of these treatments, especially ketamine, aren't in the forefront yet. They're being used in the VA. They're basically just at the infancy of, the research period. I know, like, my insurance won't even cover it. And that's what is so crazy for me is like there's potentially this amazing thing out there that could give me 80% benefit, but I don't have a authorization from my insurance saying, yep, do it. So I'm going to pay out of pocket, of course, because it is what it is. But shout out to the VA for really leading the way, I think, in that ketamine space and at least starting, the research on it, because PTSD is so prevalent, obviously, in our veteran community that we got to figure it out, and they're doing some really good things.
Agreed. Yeah, 100%. One thing that I can share with our viewers as far as the kind of my life cycle that it went for the ketamine, and this was just using the Spravato version of it, which is really just the Johnson & Johnson version, the nasal version of it. So essentially the first month is sort of what they call the induction phase. And so you do it twice a week. And then after that first month, then it went to once per week. And then there is a little bit of a lifeline on it, but eventually you taper off even more. And so you might go to once every 2 weeks or once every 3 weeks. Now, what my doctor shared with me is each person is just a little bit different. And so you might have somebody that can eventually get to once every 3 or 4 weeks, but you might have other people that need it once every 2 weeks or once every week. So I eventually went down to once every 2 weeks, and we found that there was a little bit less of a lifeline for me with it in terms of how long it lasted, the benefits. And so we went back to once a week. I continue to do ketamine once a week, and the lifeline on it is pretty good week to week. And I know that for a period when I tried to stretch it out to once every 2 weeks, I noticed that there was some diminishing return as we got towards the end of that second week. And so it really just depends on, each person. And that's something you can have a conversation with your doctor about as far as what those lasting effects are for you and how you're feeling.
No doubt. So for me, Steve, I know I have been researching it. I have been looking into it. I have spoken to several people who have done it, including yourself. I'm so scared of just having a bad tweak. Like, when I first thought of it, it's like, you're going to go get me high and that's going to help me. And I'm not going to lie, if I take a gummy to go to sleep sometimes, like, I panic just from a little bit of, a sleeping gummy. So a lot of it for me was just a little bit nervous of the unknown. Tell me, when you did this, when you went into it, did you have some of the similar fears? And if so, how was it? Like, if you had to rate, like, you were tweaking balls, you were feeling light and fluffy like a Valium, like, how did it feel?
Yeah. Yeah, I was a little bit worried too. The one thing that my doctor had shared with me is he said, look, he goes, "This is so low risk." He goes, "There's really no harm in us trying this and seeing if it's a modality that works for you, but that the harm is near non-existent." And so I felt a little bit better about that. And so I'll say, my first time I was a little bit apprehensive. I would say I felt the effects probably within about the first 10 minutes or thereabouts. And the way my doctor has it set up is he has sort of a room that is set up, individual rooms, and it's dark. You have the ability to bring up or down the LED lighting, and he's got a recliner there that you can pretty much go back and take a nap, which is normally what I do. And I will say that it's not a feeling that is just like overwhelming in terms of like, you're high and you're totally tricked out and you couldn't operate. I would say it creates like a spacey feeling, at least for me, it creates a spacey feeling and one that is, I feel a little bit kind of loopy, but I could still function if I needed to. As far as like mental faculties, like, you know, my doctor will come in and usually check about an hour in, sometimes a little less than that. And oftentimes we'll have a conversation. We'll just have a conversation about whatever we did over the weekend, kids, family. And again, I have that spacey feeling, but it's not one where I can't operate or I couldn't have a conversation or I couldn't, do things. Now, the flip side, would I want to go, have, record a podcast episode right after? Or, probably not. But it's one of those things where you still have your faculties about you and you could still very much function, communicate, walk, whatever the case is.
So you said it lasts about an hour. So I'm super excited. I finally took the leap. I know we had recorded this episode a while back, and for whatever reason we had some technical difficulties, so we're redoing it tonight. But since that episode and now, I have actually started the process to get into the ketamine therapy myself.
That's exciting. That's great. I know we had talked about it when we actually recorded this first episode, and you were still a little bit unsure, but you were thinking about it. And how you described it to me, think, and correct me if I'm wrong, was sort of the order of operations, going from like the SGB block, and then sort of the next phase after that would be the ketamine assisted therapy. Do you think that like are you looking forward to it? Are you apprehensive still? How are you feeling?
I'm nervous for sure. Similar, like I said, it's something new. With my anxiety, being in control is huge. So I still fear kind of having a bad trip. I did speak to somebody who told me, they had a horrible trip their third time and refused to go back. It was so bad. I know you haven't had any of those situations and some other people have not, but I'm really looking forward to it because from my understanding of it, right, is something's off with our central nervous system, whether that's your fight or flight system or, basically PTSD, those senses are frozen, they're stuck on. And I'm not clinical by any means, but from my understanding, like the stellate ganglion block kind of does paralyzes that sympathetic nervous system from always firing. But what the ketamine does is it actually is rewiring your neural pathways and in essence, healing yourself rather than just numbing that feeling. So kind of like you said, man, you tell me that number 70, 80%, feeling better, like, so I'll do it tomorrow, which gives me an idea, Steve. We might have to do it while you're there next time. Get a
That
little
might be
behind the scenes.
that would be kind of cool, actually. That would actually be pretty cool to kind of just show the viewers what the setup is.
Fire up that phone, man, and we can go live while you're tripping balls.
I love it. Yeah, it's interesting. Like the research out there on it, as I've kind of gotten to live the effects, the benefits of it, I've been spending more time doing the research and just kind of like trying to understand a little bit about how it works. And you described it exactly how I currently understand it, both from my doctor and then just from the research that I've been kind of doing. My doctor said his view is it's like this is one of the biggest advances in mental health treatment that he's seen since he's been in practice. And he described it just like you. He said it literally is rewiring your brain and it is fixing and healing and recreating the neural pathways that were damaged or that were stuck on the on switch for PTSD and for depression. And I mean, that's just in and of itself is incredible. And I know that the VA has done some incredible studies out there. I know that they're trying to also get approval for veterans to be able to do some of these therapies outside of the VA, with private practitioners as well, because they're seeing such success with things like the SGB and with ketamine treatment. So I think it's an exciting time for anybody that is going through the medical yo-yo with their mental health.
Yeah. It's with it becoming more prevalent and the research getting better and, people taking it more serious, it's only a good thing, especially for those who have been suffering in their journey for so long that haven't had the ability to, look into or research some of these different things. As it becomes more popular, hopefully more insurances will cover it. I know mine specifically doesn't, but there are some insurances that are covering it, which is awesome to hear. But like you said, it's a breakthrough. Every time I watch 60 Minutes or some different, program, they're talking about a veteran and doing these different mental health things and the profound impact that it's been having. So you asked me if I was excited, and I'm excited just so I can see like what it's going to give me. And I
Yes.
tell you, Steve, and I said it in the last episode, is like, I cried the last time after my shot was because I was like, holy fuck, dude, like this is what I've been missing. That weight was gone, though temporarily. It was like I forgot what this feels like. So I'm excited. I really hope that I'm going to see some impact like you are.
And it's interesting, Nate, too. The other thing that you talk about is, it brings up a good point. And I'll say, for me, there is still days that I'm not 100% and I don't feel uh, just like amazing. There's also certain things that are still triggers for me that bring back a lot of the negative feelings, negative thoughts, and some of the bad things, especially if I get into the sort of thought process or the spiraling thoughts that come with my past employment and what happened to me overseas. I can still, like, those are still very raw feelings and emotions. And while I've worked on a lot of those, in therapy, those things are still there. The other thing I want to share with you, and even for some of our viewers, that my doctor shared with me recently, was the nasal version, the Spravato that I'm doing. To your point, a lot of insurance companies aren't still covering it, or they're requiring sort of like onerous paperwork to be done. What he does is he offers up the IV version of ketamine therapy in his practice. And he explained that that is one that a lot more insurance companies do cover, and they will cover because it's, I guess, a lower cost. And so that's something to explore either with your current practitioner, or if you're looking into, a ketamine therapy provider, potentially if they offer the IV version, which oftentimes is covered more wholesomely by insurance.
Yeah, and like you said, I think there's several different paths, if you want to call it, for the ketamine. I know, there's oral, there's nasal, there's IV, there's intermuscular when you give yourself a shot. So I know there's several different ones, and they also vary in dosages and whatnot. So I don't want to like blanket, obviously, say this is that, and it may not be for everybody. It may not be for me. Who knows? Obviously, I'm going to document the crap out of it when that day comes, but we owe it to ourselves to research these different things and really just to try as much as we can. At least for me, like, I told you a couple weeks ago, I flew out to Atlanta to see a specialist. Like, I'm doing everything that I can to try to figure this out. Because if it was as simple as, and this is really what I thought was going to happen when I went to Utah, that boom, we were going to fix it, or a doctor could come cut it out of me, or, I was going to obviously be normal again in 30 days or whatever. I didn't know that this is going to be a year and a half long journey. And I will say, this is kind of branching off now, but I still do some of the chateau meetings during the week. And to see some of the people who have been out of the chateau for several years, still having bad days some days, like, it freaks me out, man. Like, it freaks me out that it's not a broken leg. It's not a torn knee. You don't really know when better is going to come. But as long as you're diligent in your journey in doing the things that are in your leadership plan, or just the things that you know are beneficial for you, which could be this ketamine, you owe it to yourself to try.
Perfectly said. Yeah, perfectly said. I would describe it as this is some people, their mental health journey may be something that comes on more for a shorter period of time. For others, it may be longer in duration. There's no two people that are alike, and that's, I think, why that saying that Colleen likes so much that I love also is, recovery is not linear. It's not a straight line across. It peaks and valleys, and just when you think it's good, you get that valley again. The kind of the best description I can say is like, I can speak for myself, which is is the only person I can speak for. And I can say that, this is likely a lifetime thing that I'll have to manage, much like somebody who gets a cancer diagnosis and they go into remission. Well, it's still something that they have to now test for every year or every 6 months. And they're still going to have periods where they might be in remission, but it may come back several times throughout life. And, I can speak for myself and say there's good days, there's bad days, but as I describe it to a good friend when we got together for coffee last week, one foot in front of the other, getting dressed, going through the motions that you need to stay focused on your mental health recovery. And that's a good day. And there is going to be days where you're feeling great and things are wonderful. And it may stay that way for several months. And then you may hit a patch where it's a week or two where things are down. That's okay. It's a lifetime sort of commitment, is what I can say for myself and how I view it as a lifetime commitment for recovery from my mental health journey. That is hard to swallow some days. It is tough, much like you said, it scares you to think like, how long is this going to last? Why can't it just be cut out of me? Absolutely, because I want to go back to the point where I was fine, where I was living life, where things were bright and cheery. I want that back. But I know that every day that I'm making steps forward is a good day.
No doubt. And that's why I call it a journey, because it's
That's right.
continuous, right?
That's right.
No doubt. So I do have a couple questions, man, about the ketamine. What did you feel like was the number one takeaway? I know you said you felt 80% better or so. Like, what was it? Could you kind of not quantify it, but explain what was feeling better?
Yeah, good question. So I think for me, the biggest thing it gave me was hope and feelings of hope for the future, which was one thing that I really struggled to to recover, to get back. And so that was probably the biggest thing that it did for me, was give me that hope for the future. And also along with that hope was sort of the motivation to have that hope and know that, like, hey, brighter days are coming, better days are coming, better things are coming. And because that was something that I had lost, was that hope for the future and that feeling of kind of what the future looked like. And for somebody like myself, very much, for my 22-year career working at the State Department, I very much looked at the here and now when I was working overseas, but I also looked strategically of, okay, in 6 months, we need to do this thing. So we need to have this all planned out and charted out. And yes, it may change and it may differ, but we need to have a plan. So having lost that and lost that sort of hope and planning for the future was something that I really struggled with. And so that's probably the biggest thing it gave me back. It gave me back the keys to be able to drive the car for hope and for the future.
That's awesome. Are you still currently doing the Spravato?
I am. So I'm doing it. I do it once every 2 weeks now. That's sort of the lifeline that we found that works best for me. So for right now, it's once every 2 weeks. But I think at some point, probably in the coming weeks or so, we had talked about kind of just seeing what that lifeline is for me. And if there's potential of needing to wean off of it. I shouldn't say needing, because there's not necessarily a need. You can really do it, going forward for, years. There's no period of time you have to be off of it or you'll experience a negative health effect. It's just one of those things where it's a trial and error thing.
So let's say this, Steve. There's a guy or a gal in front of you who's feeling the feels. They're down, they're depressed. They're recently struggling with this newfound PTSD. They're having panic attacks or anxiety attacks, and they just don't really know what's next, where to go next. Would you recommend the ketamine treatment to that person?
I would. The couple caveats I would I would say. And my doctor, my primary care doctor, was excellent at explaining this. He said, there's no one thing that's going to get you feeling better. It's a combination of things. Not only is it just medication, or not only is it just like an antidepressant, or just ketamine, or just therapy. It's sort of a conglomerate of all of these things. And just like medication isn't necessarily successful without therapy, combining both of those, both therapy and treatment plan medically, is really kind of the gold standard. I would say the same is true to have those two, the therapy, the medication, and then the ketamine is an add-on, it's an adjunct. And so I can speak for the Spravato, which is the sort of indications for that for a practitioner are that so you have to have tried and failed two antidepressants prior, and they had to not be a full response, or they were only a partial response. So ketamine is kind of one of those things where as you work down the line of therapy and antidepressants and other types of medications, you add the ketamine on as kind of a connector of the blocks if you're not having a full partial, or if you're not having a response to just therapy and antidepressants. But 100%, I would say have that conversation with your doctor, especially if you've tried several different medications and you're just not finding the relief, and you're not finding the sort of progress that you would be expecting. Absolutely have that conversation. I would also say if your practitioner doesn't offer ketamine, because not all do, it is 100% okay to find another practice to add on, not necessarily to switch, but you can have another practitioner on top that you do your ketamine treatment with, and you could have a separate practitioner that you do your standard medication management for your mental health symptoms with. And so I would say it's okay to expand out if your practitioner doesn't offer this currently.
No doubt, no doubt. And like you were saying, they want to see treatment resistant, I think is at least the word
Yes.
my person uses, is that you got to try other things. You can't just go, hey, I'm depressed, give me
Right.
some ketamine. It's not just about that. It's about, like you said, part of the journey, getting on the right regiment of medications if that's what you choose to do, and then just seeking out other things such as ketamine. I know for mine, they called it CAP, or ketamine assisted psychotherapy. So ours will be a little bit different, which will be really sweet to compare.
Yeah.
Mine will be orally, and then for 2 hours, I will have a therapist in the room with me doing actual therapy work. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see how we do with it. And like I said, I'll definitely be documenting it.
Absolutely.
So either people can learn or people can laugh, because it's going to be definitely one of the two.
That's that is a little bit different than my experience with it, but I'm actually excited to be able to do our interview with you and to kind of, just see what the differences were, and just compare notes, because if
Yeah,
nothing
we'll
else.
make a part 2 of this one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would say, kind of as some, parting words, I would say, as we always do, we on this podcast talk so much about different, therapeutic modalities and medications and adjunct therapies. And I think one of the deals is that there's no right or wrong. All of these decisions apply on a one-to-one basis. And so what you and I talk about might not be right for somebody else who's going through their mental health journey. And we just share different ideas and different modalities that have worked or haven't worked as just a conversation to try to shine light and bring information to a topic that is just so often off limits. And if it helps just one person, I think we've done and we've accomplished our mission for that day of the podcast, Nate.
Absolutely. It's about saving lives. I mean, let's be real. The big mission is to break the stigma of talking about the stuff. But what does that mean? What are we really trying to do? Is to just save lives, man, because if you're not getting help and you don't have a journey, a lot of people are not making it out there. And there's statistics to prove that each and every day, how many are not making it.
Absolutely.
Like you said, that's the blessing of what this Beyond the Badge is us creating this community of just people in their journey, not someone lecturing, not someone telling you what you need to do to get better. We're not medical professionals. This isn't medical advice. This is just real life, what we're going through in the current moment. And if it resonates with you, maybe a loved one, That's all we can hope for, is that you share this with them and be part of the journey. You know what I mean? Like the page, follow us, subscribe, drop comments, add people's names that we could be sending this kind of stuff out to. Or if you have ideas or topics that you guys want us to talk about more in depth, leave that too. Like, this is an all-inclusive place where we just want to grow. Man, I really am fortunate, Steve, to have met you, to met Colleen, that all of our journeys, are so different but so similar. And really, just, you're the Ketamine King now, man. That's in the bottom. Instead of saying Steve, it's just gonna say Ketamine King.
Ketamine King. Yeah, I can't speak highly enough about it. It's been a force multiplier for me in my recovery during this mental health journey.
Absolutely. So again, we appreciate you guys tuning in to Beyond the Badge. I'm Nate. That's Steve. And we really hope that this resonated with some of you at home. Make sure you tune into our next episodes. In community, we heal, and we're going to heal in this goddamn community we've created. So peace out. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate your insight, brother. And we'll make sure to come out with part 2 with either Steve sitting in the chair or me sitting in the chair, so you can see what it's like.
Thanks, Nate. I appreciate you, brother. And good luck.
Sir.
I can't wait to hear how it goes.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Talk soon.
All right. Peace.
Yeah.